Hello. Today, we will begin Module 4, the American Republic in Practice. We will cover the U.S. Constitution in this first section. In this video, which will be the first of two on this subject, you will learn how the Constitution furthers the people's natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and the types of powers that are specified in the Constitution. We will touch upon a few of the most important articles in the Constitution, then move to the Bill of Rights. In the last two modules, we discussed the ideas and principles that are at the root of the American system of government. Once consent of the governed has been granted, what does that mean in terms of governmental organization? Does the country need a legislative body or an executive? What about judges and courts? All of these details were argued and debated in the Constitutional Convention. The Constitution establishes practical structures and rules for governing. The framers created a tripartite system patterned after the Roman model and the traditions of English law and parliamentary government. The new American government was comprised of an executive branch, led by the president, a legislative branch, elected by the citizenry, and a judicial branch appointed by the executive and confirmed by the legislative branch to decide federal court cases. The framers' structure established federalism with defined powers, which can be enumerated, reserved, and concurrent, separation of powers, and checks and balances. This arrangement was fashioned as a balance between liberty and order. Influences of this system can be found in Montesquieu's The Spirit of the Laws and earlier models of governance. As was mentioned repeatedly throughout Module 2, the primary purpose of government is to protect the natural rights of the people, to protect them from harm to life, liberty, and property. Government protects rights through all three branches of government. Legislatures make laws. Executive departments enforce laws and deter crime by executing search warrants, making arrests, and prosecuting the accused. And the judiciary decides the guilt or innocence of the accused and ensures the laws being enacted conform to the Constitution. Negative rights are the constitutional rights that restrain government from actions toward or against the individual. To respect your negative rights, government simply needs to not act upon you or your property. Remember, the Constitution does not grant freedoms to American citizens. It forbids government from infringing on or outright stripping them from citizens. Positive rights are entitlements of goods, services, or treatments accorded by government to individuals. These are usually established by legislatures or affirmed by courts. However, whatever government bestows can also be taken away. The words negative and positive indicate the nature of the rights rather than an opinion on the characteristics of the rights themselves. The Constitution delegates powers explicitly granted to the three government branches. These are known as the enumerated powers. They address topics such as the national defense, a system of national commerce, and the powers granted to the federal government to operate in the states. These details include the lines of authority for the military, the responsibilities for waging war, the respecting of contracts, the legal process for bankruptcy, the setting of weights and measures to encourage free trade across state lines, and the establishment of post offices. As one example, in Article 2, the President is specifically empowered to act unilaterally in military emergencies. However, Congress holds the purse strings, which is a traditional way of saying they control funding, and they may choose to deny the Department of Defense any additional money necessary to wage warfare. Some powers in this article and throughout the Constitution are known as concurrent powers, which means they are held by both the federal government and the states. These can include imposing taxes, overseeing highways and roads, creating budgets, managing debt, establishing court systems, and maintaining military forces. In the latter, the federal government directs the regular and reserve military forces, while the states each have their own National Guard. Exclusive federal powers are those powers that are set aside for the federal government. The states cannot exercise these powers without federal permission. These powers include coining and printing money, declaring war, regulating interstate commerce, establishing the federal courts, and controlling the immigration process. Article 1 establishes the federal government's legislative branch in the form of Congress. Section 2 through 7 lays out the form of the House of Representatives and the Senate, rules for elections, compensation, and procedures for passing bills into law. Section 8 enumerates the delegated powers of Congress, which include collecting taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, paying the public debts, providing for the nation's common defense and general welfare, regulating commerce between the states and with foreign countries and the American Indian tribes, establishing uniform rules on naturalization of new citizens, establishing bankruptcy laws and the creating of currency, creating post offices, promoting copyright laws, declaring war and raising and supporting the military establishment, and making laws to support the functions of the federal government and its departments and agencies. The first clause of Section 8 authorizes Congress to lay and collect taxes for the common defense or general welfare of the country. The third clause enumerates the power of Congress to regulate commerce, both internationally and across state lines. In case law, the Commerce Clause is often linked with the Necessary and Proper Clause to assert a more expansive perspective of these powers. The 18th Clause, known as the Necessary and Proper Clause, states that the Congress shall have the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof. In McCulloch v. Maryland, the Supreme Court ruled that the clause implied incidental powers that are conducive to the exercise of a enumerated power. Section 9 denies specific powers to Congress, as well as affirming certain restrictions on other branches. The first clause of Section 10 is called the Contract Clause and prohibits the states from exercising the enumerated powers that are reserved for the federal government. These include entering into treaties or alliances and coining money or issuing currency. Article 5 outlines the process of adding amendments to the Constitution. There are two methods. Amendments may be proposed by Congress with a two-thirds vote in both the House and the Senate, or two-thirds of the state legislatures may request Congress convene a convention to propose amendments. The Supremacy Clause in Article 6 asserts the Constitution, laws, and treaties of the United States are the supreme law of the land. In the event of a conflict between concurrent federal and state law, the Constitution shall take precedence. Next time, in the next video, we will finish this section by looking at the Bill of Rights. Until then, thank you for your time. If you want to learn more about the subjects we have discussed, here are the sources used for this section.